Okay, so let's get started. So Harsh,
Yep.
warm welcome. Thank you so much for taking your time and doing this session on how to become a Solidity developer. Uh, let's deep dive in. Let's get started. Um, so, how did you transition? Tell us a little bit about your background to start with, right? And how did you transition from Web 2 to Web 3? And what are you doing at the moment?
Cool. Yeah. So my name is Hirsch, and as of now, I'm 20. So I started programming when I was very young, by the age of 16 or 15. I don't exactly remember. So yeah, and after that, I worked. So I still work with Hack Club. That's a non-profit that helps teenagers get into tech, and it is supported by Elon Musk and Vitalik as of now. And after that, I got into the blockchain space and started working as a blockchain developer. So how I got into this space, the story is a bit funny. I had a friend who mined Bitcoin in 2012 or something like that, and has a hard disk which has like more than 3 crores worth of Bitcoin in it. So I couldn't understand that how could a hard disk have something that's like worth this much. So that's how I actually went into the space, understood how it works. Then I found out that there's something by the name of Ethereum, where like someone who's like a developer like me could also make apps. So that's kind of how I got it started. So I was part of a like small hacker circle. They taught me cryptography and some like other primitives like that. And yeah, slowly I started working with people, and that's how I got into the space. And from that point till now, I'm hooked. So yeah.
No, awesome, awesome. That's great. So, what made you to pick up Ethereum, and like what specifically in Ethereum are you building at the moment?
Cool. Yep. So for Ethereum, the thing was that at that time, most of so at that time Solana and all of this was not very popular. So basically, the only thing where you can make apps was Ethereum, and there was a lot of content available for Ethereum. So that's why I choose Ethereum. Now to the second question, that what I am building as of now in Ethereum. So I worked on few Olympus folks, and I even contributed to Olympus. So I have a PR there that got merged. So and after that, I worked on a blockchain bridge that could kind of bridge multiple EVM compatible blockchains together. So it was for Moonrabbit. I was making a bridge for Moonrabbit. They have a EVM compatible chain, and I was building a bridge for them. So we built that bridge. So that was the second thing I worked on, and yeah, till this fight has been like DeFi apps. That's kind of why I started working on Ethereum. But I've also worked on Substrate. So I've also like built chains with Substrate, which is completely different from writing smart contracts themselves. So yeah.
No, this is super great, right? So let's do one thing. Let's kind of divide the session into three different categories. One, we'll talk about um, how a Web2 developer or anyone who is passionate about Solidity can start learning Solidity to start with, right? And what are the opportunities that are available in the Solidity at this point of time? Like what sort of projects that they can do, what sort of internships that they can do, and then eventually you mentioned about the developer community, right? We'll touch a little bit on how strong is the developer community in the Ethereum vis-a-vis other protocols. So where can people go find resources and also at the same time get involved in the community and build projects along with fellow developers, right? So to get started, so if there is an existing Web2 developer who's looking to transition into Web3, and uh, to start with, which one do you recommend? Do you recommend them to learn Ethereum? Do you recommend them to learn Solana or Substrate or Tezos? What is your primary recommendation? I know it depends on a lot of multiple other factors, but as a developer, who have built multiple projects there, right? So, what is your suggestion? How should one look into getting started in the Web3 space?
Cool. Yeah. So so basically, like what I would call like, so if you would like label requirements to be a good blockchain developer, the requirement number zero, because we are programmers, we start with zero, would be to basically understand what this blockchain even is, and like the blockchain primitives like cryptography and related areas. So basically this is something that I see a lot of people missing. And when you miss this layer of understanding, right, that what a consensus is, what is Byzantine's general problem, right, how is the Nakamoto consensus a solution to it. So when you don't invest your time on this very fundamental aspects of the blockchain technology, regardless of whatever framework you might learn, you would be like working in a very isolated mental space, and you won't know what you're dealing with, right? And when you don't know what you're dealing with, after some time it becomes a monster, right? So to make sure that you don't land up in that space, the first requirement definitely would be to pick up a very generic blockchain book that just talks about the technology, no framework, nothing, right? From there, the understanding what cryptography is, right, how wallets are secured by cryptography, how blockchains are secured by cryptography, and then what a consensus is, right, what are these different models of consensus. And to some extent I would also say understanding of finance is also very important, right? I know a lot of blockchain developers that are good engineers, but they do not make good products because they do not understand that how it's gonna solve anything. So you need to understand tokenomics, what it is, and you need to look into a lot of the existing projects that have already existed. Once you have a very generic understanding of this space, right, then it's the time you pick up a framework or a language. And the first language that I suggest everyone is Solidity. And the reason is that regardless of all the new chains coming in, right, there is a huge network effect on Ethereum, right? So a lot that is still being built is for Ethereum, just because there's already a lot on Ethereum. So that's why Solidity is the first language, the first blockchain language, I could say, someone should pick up, right? And one thing that they should keep in their mind is that when they're writing code on Solidity, they're not writing a blockchain. So this is something that I myself am confused, right? That can you call a smart contract developer a blockchain developer? Because they're writing they're writing apps on top of infrastructure, right? Although you call Android developers, although they might not be developing the operating system. So in a way we can. And so basically, yeah, these are the like two modes of development. You could either write smart contracts, which basically means is that the blockchain infrastructure is already there, you're just writing apps on top of it. Or the second path, which I personally think is a harder path, but is more fun, is to write the blockchain infrastructure itself. So that kind of feels more empowering. But yeah, anyway, the first thing definitely is Solidity. Everyone should start with Solidity. So once someone has picked up Solidity, right, now is the time that you have to figure out that whether this is something that you want to continue with, you just want to write the apps, or you also want to make the infrastructure that's powering it, right? So if you now want to write the infrastructure too, that is the blockchain itself, then you would need to have an understanding of systems programming, right? And once, so you need to have a decent understanding of what systems programming is. And for that, the language I would suggest any day is Rust. So pick up Rust. Then there's a framework that I really love. It's called Substrate. You can make custom blockchains from it. And so learn Substrate. I personally think that it's gonna be big in future. There's already demand for it, and there's already a community around it in India. So yeah, Solidity. And after Solidity, if you have to be more specific, make some D apps. And the D apps I would suggest is that try to make a automated market maker, right? So look into how they are implemented and try to make the most primitive one. Try to make the Uniswap version 1. It works, right? You don't need to make the Uniswap version 3. Try to understand what oracles are, what Chainlink is, right? So try to play with Chainlink. And after that you could also, like, try some other projects that you think could be fun. But I would say, like, all the classic DeFi projects that are there, try to make a toy implementation of it. It's always a good thing to add in your portfolio. So for example, for me it was Olympus. I read the whole code base of Olympus. I made notes of it for like 5 or 7 days, and it helped me. I actually ended up making a contribution to Olympus. So yeah, this is kind of like what a path can be for being a Solidity developer. And for building infrastructure, again, just learn systems programming. And if you are a good systems programmer, if you have the requirement zero of understanding cryptography and blockchain primitives, you will any day very easily pick up building infrastructure itself. Yep.
No, that
And
no,
yeah, yeah.
this is solid. Yeah, go ahead, Harsh.
Yeah, and one last requirement would be that although if someone is coming from Web 2, I'm already assuming that they're very decent with a framework like React, Vue, or something like that. But if you are not, like, let's say you're not even from the Web 2 space, you don't even understand, haven't made a website before, please invest your time in JavaScript, right? So it's kind of like something that you would deal a lot with. So you would deal a lot with tools like Hardhat, and you need to have understanding of JavaScript and TypeScript there. So you need to have strong understanding of that. That's what really helped me, that I have been building websites professionally for like 1.5 years before I got into the blockchain space. So I was very good with that part already. Yep,
Wonderful,
yep.
wonderful. These are like super solid insights, and I myself am taking like a lot of notes, and it's crystal clear, right? You started with learning the basics of blockchain, understanding about consensus, and then learning Solidity, why to learn Solidity, and building applications on top of it, playing with the code, and then learning Rust and Substrate if they wanted to build the infrastructure there. Yeah, super awesome. So I'd like to touch base on the last point that you mentioned, Harsh, right? Because most of the developers, so there is so many Web3 enthusiasts out there who wanted to get into the blockchain space, from non-developers in Web 2 to the engineering college students, college-going students, school-going students. So if someone is not a developer, if he or she doesn't have a coding background, right? Um, should they get started directly with Solidity, or should they get started with JavaScript, learn that, and then get into Solidity, understanding what a smart contract is, and then write building smart contracts on top of it?
So if you have no programming experience, I would any day suggest to firstly learn JavaScript or any good first programming language. Learn Rust, right? If although Rust is a very hard first language for someone, but I would say that yeah, just pick up some other programming languages, make something there, right? Because Solidity is not a good first programming language for someone, right? Like it has a concept of gas limit and things like that that would never exist in a traditional programming language. And it's also like you cannot do a lot in Solidity that you can do on other programming languages. So definitely learn a scripting language like JavaScript or Python, although I would suggest JavaScript until unless you want to get into the uh, AI, ML, or like data science space. Go with JavaScript and try to also like do some systems programming. If you can't do Rust, do C++, right? C++, even like I know 14-year-old kids who can do it. I could do it when I was 15. So you could just do some systems programming with C or C++.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thanks. So on that note, let me take a little bit deep dive on the Solidity part. So people talk about Solidity only from creating the smart contract and building dApps on top of it, right? So from the technical point of view, from a developer point of view, so let's deep dive a little further and like what specific topics or concepts one should learn in terms of becoming an expert in the Solidity, right? Of course, we will start with smart contract, but like, how should one deep dive, and what are other topics that you would suggest any developers to look upon or play upon or learn to become an expert Solidity developer on top of the existing smart contracts or the basic smart contracts?
Well, yeah, that's like that's a very good question, to be honest. So yeah, so basically, as you said, like even I learned Solidity in a day, and I was writing the apps, but that didn't make that I was a Solidity expert in a day, right? So there are some components that you have to know. First of all, you have to understand why the gas limit even exists there, right? Why does smart contracts have a gas limit? And for that, you would have to understand Turing's halting problem, right? So you would have to understand number one thing is what is gas, how to optimize for gas, right? So basically, this is a skill, or I could say this is an art to write code that would consume less gas, right? So this is something that's kind of like a sign of a good Solidity developer. Number three is that you also need to understand uh, security issues related with smart contracts, right? A lot of the people can write smart contracts, but what they don't understand is how like their logic can be manipulated. So for example, there's reentrancy attack, right? If you don't know about it, you might end up writing code like that. I myself have initially ended up writing a code like that was prone to that attack. So understanding what are the security threats, understanding what gas is, right, why it exists, and how to optimize for it. If you can, the other understanding is EVM, which is Ethereum's virtual machine, right? So if you have a very deep understanding of how Ethereum's virtual machine works, then basically that's like amazing. Now you can, when you write a piece of code, you can figure out that whether it's the most optimized code possible or not. And you would also have to learn a little bit of assembly, so basically like EVM's assembly. So a lot of the time we write inline assembly code for EVM itself. So yeah, these are some things apart from the basic stuff that is out there on Solidity that you would have to learn to kind of be like on the top tier Solidity developers.
Yeah, top 1% or 5% there, right? Yeah,
Yep,
this
yep.
is great. Okay, awesome. So would you like to touch something on ZK rollups? Because I think that is a very hot topic that is going around in the Ethereum circles. I think there was like
Yeah.
a lot of discussion around that in the ETH Denver. So would you like to touch a little bit on ZK rollups and sharding? What are these all about at a very higher level?
Sure.
So for example, if a developer wants to solve some of the pressing challenges or issues in these topics, uh, where should they start and how should they look into that?
Cool. So first of all, like let's start with sharding, because that was like before that, like Zika has been in discussion for quite some time, but let's start with like sharding because it's gonna be on layer one, and then let's talk about layer two. So sharding, if anyone has ever worked with a database, they definitely already understand what sharding is. But for now, think that instead of all the nodes having the whole blockchain store with them, right, or doing it for everyone, right, that work would be distributed between nodes, right? And based on a transaction that you would make, it will be routed to the shard where that transaction should live. So that would heavily scale Ethereum, because it would allow a lot of transactions to happen in parallel, right? So this is what sharding is. It's basically, think, if you understand what database sharding is, you kind of already understand what Ethereum sharding is. And the thing is that it's a way to scale it on layer one. And when we say layer one, what we mean is that it's a way to scale Ethereum itself, right? Then there are layer 2 scaling solutions, right? So there are channels. So layer 2, a famous channel solution is the Lightning Network. Bitcoin has it, right? Then there is Plasma, which has a problem of data availability. That's something for different. We are coming to ZK rollups, right? And the third thing is rollups. So what the concept of a rollup is that basically rollup is, you can think of it as a layer 2 solution whose state is backed on layer 1. So if what it basically means is that your funds do not live in layer 2, your funds actually are there on layer 1 itself. So if in future your layer 2 goes down, it's no more there, your funds are still there on the layer 1, right? A smart contract on Ethereum's layer 1 is protecting it. So now there are two ways to do them. And these things basically scale Ethereum, right? Because you're doing transactions, all the state transition on another layer, and then you're just rolling up or committing the state on Ethereum, the main layer, the main chain, right? So that's how kind of roll up scale Ethereum. Now there are two types of roll ups. Number one is the optimistic roll up. So if someone is aware with optimism, that is what optimistic rollups are. Like, they are doing the optimistic rollups. And the idea with optimistic rollups is that they commit this state, and that state could be wrong. So basically, another participant in the network can verify by recomputing all the transactions, that whether the state on the layer 1 blockchain is right or not. If it's not right, they can challenge it, and they get a reward if they find something that's not correct, right? Find something that was committed on the blockchain that was not correct. Now zk rollups take this to another level. Now because of this property of optimistic rollups, it takes time to get a finality there. Now in case of zk rollups, it's all backed by cryptography, and zk means zero knowledge. So what zero knowledge proves what basically so basically you have to understand the concept of computational integrity, which is ci. So what ci means is that you could do sub computation for me, and the traditional way of verifying that whether this computation is right or not is by me also doing that computation, right? But in case of zk, this whole zk space, what you can do is that you could do the computation, right? And I could find out whether that computation is right or wrong without even doing the computation, like without doing all that computation again, right? So the idea with zk rollups is that all of these state changes that have happened on the layer 2 to generate a proof of it, right? And then commit that proof on the layer 1. Layer 1 has a verifier, and layer 1 can verify whether this state transition was legit or not, and if it's legit, it is accepted as it is. So there's no you don't have to wait for someone to challenge or to recompute the whole thing. So it saves a lot of resources, it saves a lot of time. The thing is that zk technology is still being developed. There's still a debate between whether we should go with snarks or whether we should go with stacks. These are two like prominent technologies. There's also bullet points, but stacks and snarks are kind of like the thing where in between which the community is split, right? And the holy grail for anyone to solve as of now is to make a layer 2 that is EVM compatible. So as of now, if you look at the scaling solutions that we have in terms of zk, we have Starkware, which has Starknet, and Starknet has its own programming language, Cairo, right? But as of now, there is no layer 2 like Optimism, right, which is EVM compatible. So Optimism has its own EVM, but it can still like run your Solidity code, right? Which I guess you would need to have to you would have to do some slight modifications, but that are not as much. In case of the existing solutions, you would have to write the whole program once again. So yeah, it's kind of like the holy grail of scaling uh, Ethereum.
Great, great. So much of knowledge out there on zk and sharding in less than 5 minutes. So I know we have very short amount of time. So let's switch gears towards on the practical aspects with the developers, right? So as a developer, if someone wants to get into Solidity, learning Solidity, and what if they wanted to build a basic dApp to start with, right? So how many hours he or she should spend, presuming, let's presume that like they have coding background, they know C++ or JavaScript beforehand. So how many hours they should spend in learning and building? Ideally, how many hours they should spend is the question.
Okay, so ideally they should spend as much as they can because yeah, that's like a very obvious answer. But to be honest, I cannot answer in terms of hours, because the thing is that what I've seen is that my understanding of time for someone else usually fails. I learned React in a week, and then I found out there are people who are doing it for 6 months, right? And I get it, you're trying to get very advanced in it, but I couldn't see a very huge difference between in terms of fundamental understanding, right? There's a lot that can go on top of it. But your first D app, I would say like anyone can. So first of all, if you want to make a D app, instead of making your own, I would firstly suggest to find a popular project and then to make a clone of it. That's always better than making something of your own initially, because you don't even have an idea that whether what you're making touches some complexity or not, right? You could just make very primitive stuff. So basically you could just make uh, let's say a state changer, a variable x, you are simply changing its value, right? But that's not like pushing you, right? So pick up any project, right? Pick up a small DeFi project, clone the GitHub repository, take 3 to 4 days, right? Read the code, make notes, try to understand how all of this is working, try to make a map, it will take 3 to 4 days, 5 days. For me, in case of Olympus, I guess it was a week long journey, but it's always fruitful, right? Once you understand it, you can implement it in 2 days or 3 days, right? So you can make a very great, amazing project in 8 to, let's say, 10 days of time. If you split half of, not even half, like let's say 65-70% of the time in understanding the code base, and 30% of it for implementing it. So yeah, I guess that can be a great way to start.
Yeah, it's a good segue to start, and so that you understand the smart contract and you were able to build a project, right? Even if it is clone, it's a project at the end of the day. So Pranav and Keshav, do you have any questions? Yeah, go ahead, Pranav. Unmute yourself.
Yeah, Harsh, first of all, thanks a lot. It was filled with a lot of insights. And about me, I have learned Python on my own and made some great projects on that. But now, since the Web3 trend is hot, I just want to switch towards it because I'm also a bit interested in crypto and stuff. More than front end part, I just want to focus more on smart contracts and its development. So since I have a bit coding interest, should I directly start with Solidity now, since you spoke about that?
Oh yeah, like go and start with it. You already know Python, so uh, you could already use like the Web3 package that's available for Python, and start developing with Solidity, right? So you already have a decent background to get started with it. Solidity is not a good first programming language, and you already have a decent first programming language, which is Python, right? So it's a good language. So yeah, get started with it. About the front end thing, so why I tell people to learn a bit of front end is that you can create good POCs, that is proof of concepts for your projects, if you know a bit of front end, right? Because when you actually want to demo something to someone and you're showing them a black terminal, uh, it's good for techies, like we can understand, we can rejoice that, but for someone like who is just an investor or something like that, that's not, or even for your portfolio, right? uh, that's not, that does not look very good. So I would say invest some amount of time. You don't even need to be an expert in it, right? Like you just need to know how to make a basic website, how JavaScript works, and a very simple framework like React, and you can learn React enough for making POCs in 7 days, right? You don't need more than that time. So yeah.
Yeah, Harsh, that was definitely a big point you raised. I mean, one of my last projects, it was the whole UI and the front end thing which was missing. Thanks a lot.
Yep, thanks. Yeah.
Awesome, thanks. So Harsh, on that note, any last tips, pointers, for developers looking to transition, or the developers who are already working on Solidity or any other programming languages, right? Any specific tips, suggestions, and what we will wrap this up.
So yeah, so basically kind of from this side of like transiting into Web3, I've covered mostly what I wanted to, but what I would like to add is that once you get to a level where you can make good projects, right? As of now, there's a lot of noise in this space. So make sure you choose good projects, you choose good people to work with, right? As of now, there are a lot of people who are coming into Web3, like I know a lot of people who literally have no background in tech, right? And it's not bad that they don't have any background in tech, but the thing is that they can hire a lot of people and can make them do things that won't yield any value, right? And as a developer, you might think that, oh my god, I am making money, someone is paying me money. But the thing is that after 1 year or 2 year of you investing your time, and you won't have anything to show anyone, right? So first of all, once you are ready to do things, pick up good people to work in, right? Check their background, check what they have been working on, where do they come from, right? How legit they are, and then work with them. And the second thing is to not go for very very quick money in this space. As of now, there's a lot of way you could make quick money, and it's called bracket scam. You could do a lot of scam there, but the thing is that it's not gonna be very good on your, like once it gets out, it's not gonna be good for you, like try to work in this industry for the next 20 years rather than for the next 2 years and hoping that you will buy a beach and just sit there. So yeah.
No, really love that approach, right? Be for long term, 1 decade, 2 decade, 3 decades, because we're just getting started. We're still at day zero, right? There is so much to be built in the DeFi's, NFTs. Who knows? There might be some other completely different vertical that might shape up, on different blockchains. We might see like a lot of other L1s and L2 shaping up as well. Yeah. Why to do a scam and then buy a yacht and retire? Rather, you can make billions out of this whole ecosystem. Create like a lot of wealth creation for yourselves and for the whole ecosystem partners. If you think long term, right? Great, awesome. So on that note, thank you so much, Harsh, for your time. This is solid, great insights for anyone looking to step into the blockchain ecosystem and Solidity in particular. On that note, we'll keep doing more and more sessions with you. We'll take more counsel also, from you. Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate your time, and thanks for your great insights.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. Like, it was very fun. It also helped me, like reflect back on how I think how my mental models are. So it was good exercising my mental models here. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Harsh. Have a great evening, everyone. Thank you so much. Bye.
Yeah, have a great evening, everyone. Happy Holi. Yep,
Happy
bye.
Holi as well. Yeah.